Thank you, Dr. Harmon Christian, and to Pastor Tammy, Reverend Curry, to all the speakers who have gone on before my segment. I bring you all greetings from Journey of Hope, from violence to healing, a victims' families-led organization that travels around the world to tell our stories of love and loss and life in such a way that we hope will loosen the grip that the death penalty has on so many people who make decisions across our land. I'm privileged to have joined Scott Langley, who spoke earlier on behalf of Journey of Hope, to bring you my testimony here this evening. But before I do that, I also want to bring you a greeting from the Ohio Council of Churches, where I'm privileged to serve as the executive director. We call ourselves the Jesus Christ Movement for Unity, Justice, and Peace. We bring together 18 denominations, some 2,000 congregations, about 1 million people across Ohio, to speak the truth with and to power in Ohio on behalf of Jesus Christ, our Savior. I'm delighted to be in this particular place tonight, and I do want to thank also Coco for organizing this gathering for us this evening as well. But I cannot think of a better venue, a better place for us to make these presentations tonight than historic First African Baptist Church, a place of liberation and wholeness and freedom for black bodies over the years. America's oldest black congregation. I'm honored to be standing in this place tonight. I want to thank you for hosting us here. I represent a demographic that many people believe by default would support capital punishment. Here's a bit of my story. On July 30th, 1997, I was attending a church convention in Denver, Colorado. We Protestants love conventions, you know. And so there we were in Denver, the last night of our multi-day convention in Denver. And so I was gathered with my friends doing what we always had done on the final night of our gatherings, of our conventions. And the one thing we always did on the last night was a party. We went out dancing every last night of our gatherings. And there we were downtown Denver in the ballroom of a major hotel, just dancing the night away. And I was right there with my friends dancing with them all. I found myself in a nice spot in the middle of the crowded dance floor because I didn't want anybody to see that in reality I could not dance. I wasn't given that gift. But there I was with my friends and strangers in the middle of that ballroom, dancing away, having a good time with my friends, preparing to say farewell to them for 2 more years before we gather together in our next convention. Then I was dancing to In Vogue and Babyface and other folks like of that era, having a good time, when someone tapped me on my shoulder and said, "You have a phone message, a phone call." And so this was before cell phones, you know. So there I was, moving best I could, hearing the beat in this ear, and making my way down the corridor to the kitchen area where the telephones were. So I put the phone to my ear, still listening in the other ear to the beat of the music, but the telephone ear received news that caused my heart to beat and beat and beat. For the message I received was that Jennifer Ann McCoy, my baby sister as I called her, aged 21, in her own home in Cleveland, had been shot to death, with her little 2-year-old daughter Imani somewhere in the house. I received that life-changing future-altering news. And I was escorted then back to the ballroom. But somehow, word had gotten to the people in the ballroom, and God, I believe, transformed a dance floor into a sanctuary. And people began to gather around me. They reached out to me, touching my shoulder and my forehead. People I knew for years, and folks I had just met. And folks I didn't even know at all. But they circled me, and they gathered around me and reached out to me to pray for me, to send me from Denver with love back into the nightmare of our family situation in Ohio. So the next morning I woke up and put together my suitcase and made my way to the airport, and then boarded a flight for the 4 hours or so trip back to Detroit, where I would gather with my family there, and then drive to Cleveland. On that airplane, I had some of the loneliest moments I've ever had in my life as I reminisced the times, many times I had spent with my baby sister, Jennifer. And I kept thinking about Jennifer, 21 years of age, quirky, funny, loving, confusing, all of those things at once Jennifer was. She had made a few mistakes in her life, but she had overcome them. And she was on her way toward a promising future we all believed. She believed. She was looking forward to her life. And yet somebody, for reasons we still don't understand, entered her domain, held her down, and shot her execution style in her home. So I got off the plane, got to the Detroit house, grabbed the family, and we drove an hour and a half or so from Detroit to Cleveland, where I would then huddle with my older sister, Reverend Teresa, and my grandfather, William. And we began to grieve together as a family there in Cleveland. We were as if in suspended animation as we were just going around this orbit of grieving, of sorrow, of anger, of disappointment, all of those feelings and more. It was the first time we ever had anybody in our family shot to death. But we could not stay in that suspended animation for long because we had things to do. To my sister and I, first thing we did after my arrival was go to the funeral home, where I had to view Jennifer's body before the professionals began to restore her body for presentation to the public. Let me tell you, for the first time in my life, I saw what a bullet does to a human body, a high-caliber bullet. I can never unsee, my friends, what I saw at that funeral home. I hope to never see it again. I hope none of you ever has to see this in your lives if you haven't already. I wish I could unsee it. It still alters my path and how I view guns and violence. But I could not stay there. I had to go next with my sister to talk to the detectives of the Cleveland Police Department. So we went downtown and we sat with these two detectives, and they, as plainly spoken as possible, told us that they were working the case and they would try to find Jennifer's murderer. That's when I learned, and I'll come back to this later on, that's when I learned that Jennifer's case was not the worst of the worst, was not given that category or designation as being the worst of the worst, which meant something that I later realized And I'll tell you about my feelings about that later on. But we could not stay even there in the police station because we had things to do. We had to plan a funeral for Jennifer. She was 21, did not have life insurance. Most people I know, 21, did not have and do not have life insurance. She didn't have it. We had to worry about the cost of her homegoing service. So we planned the service. My sister was an ordained A&E minister. We mapped it out best as we could. But we couldn't even stay in that space for very long because we had to think about the immediate and long-term future of our family. Chiefly, who would take little Imani into their home and raise her? Oh, but along with that, who would pay for her diapers, her little pull-ups? Who would pay for her food? Who would pay for her education? Who would pay for her therapy? God knows she would need it. And then for the family that took her in, who would assist them with the mortgage costs, their own insurance, their own therapy, the food they would have to purchase to sustain the newly expanded household? Who would pay for the funeral service? All of those questions and more we had to process as we endeavored to move forward as a family. Well, my grandfather, bless his memory, he wrote a check and paid for the funeral. But those other questions lingered with us. Well, ultimately, we moved forward. My family took in little Imani. And we moved forward with our expanded household, forward with the therapy costs, forward with the expanded food costs, forward with the insurance, forward with the mortgage costs, forward with the clothing costs, and every other kind of cost you can imagine that a family has to contend with, particularly when that family has been impacted by a horrific loss of life, a catastrophic loss of life, like a homicide, like a murder. Somebody during that time asked me about the possibility of a person who killed Jennifer being caught and maybe being given death as a sentence if that person had been convicted. Well, I heard that, but I couldn't really hear it because I was not prepared to invest myself personally in the quicksand of looking back and being plagued and filled with anger and disgust to the point where all I could do is stay in that abyss, stay in that quicksand, and devote myself to days and weeks and months and years of being angry and mad to the point where I could not move forward. I did not want to make that kind of investment. And fortunately for me, the faith that I was able to keep by the grace of God was keeping me, was keeping the whole family. And it enabled us, the power of God enabled us not to be trapped in that quicksand of anger and bitterness and wanting a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. No, we were fortunately rescued from such a fate, really because we had to continue thinking about how we would best move forward. For executing the person who had killed Jennifer, if that person never been caught, and he or she never was, but that person's execution, we had to think, how would that help our family? Well, it would certainly not bring Jane back. It would not help us with our grieving. She would still be gone. It would not help us to find closure. There would be no closure for us. even to this day, whenever I see Imani, who is not living anymore, but 28, I think about her mother. So there'll never be closure. I will never move on as if she didn't exist. But executing that person would not give us any sense of restoration. It would have kept us grasping the past and being stuck there for 1 or 2, maybe 3 decades while that person made it through appeal after appeal after appeal, maybe to be executed some decades later. We don't want that for our families. That process would not have helped us at all. But by my feeble math, I was never a math major, I calculated that Ohio spent about $16 million on the matrix and the machinery of the death penalty industrial complex. I just made that up. But they spent that kind of money on that, where the victim families like us could have used that kind of money invested in the forward progress of our families. I wrote the Ohio office, state office, that caters to families who lost loved ones to murder. I wrote them the year of Jennifer's murder. Just actually, as a matter of fact, a few weeks after she was murdered. I wrote them requesting assistance. I got a nice phone letter back saying, "We have received your letter, we'll get back to you." It's been 26 years. I still haven't heard back from them. But those expenses kept on moving forward and forward and forward. What makes the state think that investing millions of dollars in the death penalty helps victims' families? I can tell you it does not. Even those who are angry and bitter are not helped by the death penalty. The death penalty, all it really is a hollow instrument of death that offers no redemption, no healing, no closure, no restoration. It just continues the vicious cycle of death that claimed Jennifer and so many other people through murder. And when the state commits homicide, it surrenders its moral high ground. And it takes from the same warped value system as people who murder our loved ones, who murdered my sister Jen. I want the state to be better than that. I want the state that says it serves and protects lives to do just that, and not claim lives through some false sense of justice called executions. Well, ultimately, I met people like myself who lost loved ones to murder, including the late Bill Pelkey, who was co-founder of Journey of Hope. I met Bill and others who were involved in Journey of Hope, and they told their stories of loss and love and moving forward. And they gave me words that described what I was feeling as I spoke my opposition to the death penalty. And those words were, simply put, "Don't kill in my name. Don't kill in my name. State of Ohio, state of Georgia, don't kill in my name. We want to help honor our loved ones, invest in the restoration of our families. Help us to move forward. Help us to meet the expenses that come from having to deal with the loss of a loved one, who may be the breadwinner in some cases for the family. Help us deal with those losses by investing in us, investing in neighborhoods that could make a difference in turning lives around, helping people become contributing members of our society, investing in their development and their progress, giving them more assets than deficits in their life. Invest in life. Well, finally, Journey of Hope gave me other words that you may see on many of our T-shirts. And those words help me as I move forward and telling these stories and meeting people who have lost loved ones to murder. Bill Pinocchio always said, the answer is love and compassion for all of humankind. People who have done horrendous things, who have hurt us and angered us the most, are still human beings, made in God's image and God's likeness, not worthy of being disposed of, not worthy of being thrown away. The answer for them and all of us is love and compassion for all of humankind. Thank you for listening.